Tonight's program is part of Farm Bureau's continued efforts to help members gain the resources and information they need to prepare themselves and their families to successfully transition the farming operation to the next generation. By bringing together our great partners nationwide and Write More Law, the next several minutes are your chance to gain insight and ask questions with some of the most knowledgeable people in the state. I have had the pleasure of hearing both these members speak, and it is going to be a fantastic presentation. And now I would like to turn it over to Tim Hicks with Ohio Farm Bureau, who will be guiding us through tonight's program.
Hey, thank you very much, Jenny. We've put together Ohio Farm Bureau's Financial Essentials program really to cover some of those topics, whether it's financial risk management, retirement planning, or in tonight's case, farm transition planning. For tonight's program, we've got Robert Moore with Write More Law that's going to cover some of the legal tools for farm transition planning. And as a lawyer and a great partner of ours, based out of Delaware, Ohio, they work across the state, helping farmers and those in agriculture kind of work through some of those challenges. And then he's going to be followed up by John Dubois with Illumination Financial Group. And he'll talk a little bit about the Land is Your Legacy program and some of the resources that are in place for farm transition planning as you consider who to put into your team to help you guide through the process and the conversation on farm transition planning. I'm going to go ahead and turn tonight's program over to Robert Moore.
Well, I appreciate you having me on tonight. So my family's farm is in Coshocton County. I live in Delaware now, and our office is in Delaware, but I'm from your part of the state. So appreciate you having me on. Our firm does mostly farm succession planning, do it all over the state. So goal is for tonight is to maybe share some ideas with you to give you some ideas that you might be able to implement into your own plan. So first of all, what is succession planning? And the way I look at it is there's three basic parts of it. Part of it is your family and farm goals. What are you trying to accomplish? Keeping land in the family or not? Transitioning a farming operation or not? Things like that. And then another part is more of the business, the financial lending, insurance that John will get more into. And then there's the other circle, which is what I do. And that's setting up wills or trust or business entities. And right there in the middle, where those three things meet, that's what I consider succession planning. So that's why typically you need a few different people on your team to meet in the middle there. The legal circle, I do want to mention, I'm not going to address entities tonight unless somebody has a question. I'll be happy to do that. With our limited time, I'm going to focus more on the estate planning, the wills and trust and that sort of thing tonight. But business entities are a very important part of succession planning, and we use them quite a bit. And if you have a question, please ask. So I think the first point to make is that there is a plan for you. And I get the sense that sometimes one of the reasons farmers may not always have their estate plan done or up to date is you don't know what to do or how to do it. You have family issues, farm issues, it's complicated, and you don't know how to even start, so it just gets put off. There's a plan for you. We've got trust, we've got LLCs, we've got right of first refusals and options and all kinds of different tools in our toolbox to put a plan together for you. So I would encourage you, and maybe if there's one thing you take away from tonight, is to understand that there are people out there that can help you. And if the person you go to isn't quite as helpful as what you need, find somebody else. John and Tim and Jenny and Kelsey and those kind of people can help you get in touch with people that might be able to help you. And once you do, I think you'll be surprised to find out that there's a lot of tools. Your situation probably isn't as unique as you think. We've probably seen it before, and we've probably got a plan for it. So one of the most common questions we get kind of off the top when we start is, what's the difference between a will or a trust? Do I need a will? Do I need a trust? And like most legal answers, the question is, it depends. Okay? So a will, you all know what that is. It's just, a document that says, when I pass away, here's where my stuff goes. And it's part of the probate court. The probate court oversees it. We've had wills forever. A trust plan does not go through probate court. So it's more private. And by not having it go through the probate court, we tend to be able to be a little more flexible with it, a little more creative with it. And the trust is similar to a will in that it gets assets from you after you pass away to your beneficiaries. But it's different in that it's private, and it just gives us a lot more flexibility. It's a lot more dynamic of an instrument for us. So what I did on this table is put down several different issues and how that issue is addressed by each. And when I meet with clients for the first time, in my mind, as I'm asking questions, I'm going through this table and seeing, well, do we need a will or do we need a trust? So thought I'd share that with you, and maybe it'll help. So first thing is probate. If you want to avoid probate 100%, then we might go with a trust. If you don't mind some probate, or depending on what assets you have, we may be able to avoid probate anyway. Estate taxes, if you don't have estate tax concerns, and today the estate tax exemption is about $11.5 million each. If you don't have estate tax concerns, a trust is not going to hurt or help. If you do, if you're over that $11 million, trust can help us minimize tax liability. Privacy, anything that goes through a will and through probate court is public information. So if you know somebody that died and their estate went through the will, or if they didn't have a will at all, it's called intestacy, you can go to the probate court, ask for their file, and you can see everything they owned, or at least went through probate at their death, what the value was and who received it. And for some people, it's really important to keep those sort of things private. If you do, then a trust plan may be for you. Concerns about heirs. If you've got heirs, children, grandchildren, whoever might be receiving assets, if they have spending problems, spouse problems, creditor problems, money management problems, what we can do is put their inheritance in a trust, have somebody manage it for them so they don't waste it. So concerns about heirs, trusts are much more useful. Oh, and I skipped one, complexity of estate plan. That's the biggest reason we use trust. And I should have told you, we work with mostly medium to large farms. So probably 80% of the time we're using trust. And typically that's because we're putting in pretty complex plans. We got off-farm heirs and on-farm heirs and rights to buy and discounts. So complexity of plan, if it's a complex plan, we'll almost always need a trust. Surviving spouse, remarriage, I'll also kind of include that in second marriage. So like if we have a second marriage and you got two different sets of children, you want to make sure your assets help take care of your spouse for the rest of her life, but you probably want your assets to go to your kids and not your spouse's kids. That's where a trust can be very effective. Legal fees. So a trust is considerably more expensive. I'll tell you what, a general idea of what our firm charges. I can't tell you what anybody else charges, but a will-based plan for us, which would be a will power of attorneys, kind of that whole set of documents. For a typical farm plan, might be $1,000, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on what we're doing. Trust plan will be $5,000. So, you know, it's quite a bit more. So we need to make sure we can justify it, and it's really worth it. Transition to farming operation trust are more helpful for that, but many of you aren't doing that in your operation, so that would be less of a need for a trust for you. But this is a list we kind of go through to see if you need a trust or a will. I think I pretty well addressed this slide, so I'm going to keep going. Yeah. Other legal tools we have. So, you know, do you need a will or trust? That's kind of the foundation of your estate plan. But then maybe you need an LLC. Maybe you got family farmland, multiple people are going to own it. An LLC may be very good for you. Right of first refusal. Somebody gets land, but before they can sell it outside of the family, other family members get to buy it back. Life insurance, which John will probably talk to, but you can talk about, but you can see all the different tools we have, and this is just a portion. We've got many more than this, but you know, between all these tools, when you bring us your plan, or when you bring us your issues, we're probably able to pull enough tools out of the toolbox to put a plan together for you. So the next two slides, I'm just going to go over two examples that these are plans we set up for families. Not so much because these plans will work for you, because everybody's different, but hopefully it shows you kind of how we can be creative and do some more complex things to address your issues. Both of these address transferring farming operations to the next generation, but hopefully there's something in here you can get out of it, even if you're not. So this is a plan where we had four sons, and son A helped with the farm some, but had an off-farm job. Farm D was the son that, you know, stayed home and worked his whole life on the farm, helped mom and dad build the farm. B and C didn't really have much to do with the farm and went off and did other things. So in this plan, we had son A got to buy the farm around his house at 3 times CAUV. Now this plan was done a long time ago, so back then 3 times CAUV was still a pretty good deal. The reason I leave this up here is to remind me to comment that you need to update your plan. So if you have an estate plan, you know, it shouldn't be static. You, every few years, maybe every 3 years, 5 years, you ought to look at it, maybe review it with your attorney and make sure it still works for you. Because if your plan says your son or daughter gets to buy land at 3 times CAUV value, they're not going to be real happy with you, because that may be twice fair market value right now. So son D, who helped build the farm much more than the others, he gets the machinery outright, doesn't have to buy it. That's kind of his sweat equity. And then he gets to buy all the rest of the land at 1.5 times CAUV value. So he got a better deal than son A. And then all the proceeds from the sale of the land goes into what we call the residuary. That's just kind of everything that's left over that's not specifically addressed. Any land that wasn't purchased, we put it in an LLC, and then the 4 brothers own the land in an LLC. And without getting into a lot of detail in that, LLCs are just really good for holding jointly owned family farmland. And then everything else is divided by those percentages. So that's just one example we did that shows how we address this family's specific needs. So this plan was, the husband was a client of ours and operates a pretty good sized farming operation. He has a partnership with his 2 sons. And this is a second marriage. And his wife is quite a bit younger than him. So it's, you know, if things play out as normal. His wife will probably live quite a bit longer than him. So his goals were, I want to make sure my plan gets income to my wife, takes care of her for the rest of her life, so she doesn't have to worry about that. I want to make sure that the plan gets the farming operation over to the sons seamlessly and it doesn't hold them up. And I want to make sure the farmland stays in the family. So what we did here was set up a trust-based plan for them. So when husband passes away, all the cash and personal assets, life insurance, will go to her, pretty much immediately. So she's got some money right now. She doesn't have to worry about paying bills. That was one of the things she was worried about. So she's got plenty of money, immediately to take care of things. So that's not something she has to worry about. Then for the farming operation, we make the farming operation ownership transfer on death to the sons. It doesn't even go through the trust. So at the instant of dad's death, the two sons are now 50-50 owners in the partnership because they inherited their dad's ownership. Now there's some paperwork we need to do to, taxes and bank and things like that. But at the instant of his death, they owned it. It's a very seamless transition over to them. And then the farmland, what we do is we put it, when husband or dad passes away, the farmland goes into his trust. The land stays in trust for the rest of wife's life. The sons or the partnership leases that land. And we put in a provision that they don't have to pay top dollar. I think they get like a 20% discount on the lease rate. But the partnership leases the land, pays rent into the trust. The trust pays the real estate taxes. And then everything that's left over, the net profit, goes to the wife. So the wife is assured of having a lifelong income from that land. The sons are sure that they've got that land base to farm, and the sons are the trustees of the trust, so they can be sure that that land will never get sold. And then at wife's death, it comes out to various sons and grandchildren, but it will stay in husband or dad's family. So again, that's a situation where, kind of a complicated situation. Walked in the door, we got our tools out, we got trust, we got transfer on death, we got life insurance, we got specific trust provisions, we got lease provisions to put those tools together and built this plan. And that's what we came up with. So again, even if you have some unique situations, some difficult situations, there's probably a plan there for you. And then transitioning over to John, how does retirement and estate planning and that kind of thing work? You do need to address both because, one of the questions I will ask a client is, what are you going to do for retirement income? And if they say, oh, I got plenty of income, I got more than I need, then maybe the estate plan or succession plan includes gifting some assets now. If they say, I think I'm going to be short of income, I'm going to have to generate some income, then the plan may include selling some assets to the next generation now. So that's how kind of the estate planning, retirement planning fit together, and they do both need to be addressed. So that's all I've got for right now. There's my contact information. If I can help you in any way or you have questions, feel free to give me a call or send me an email.
Hey, thank you very much, Robert. How do you deal with some of the multi-generational challenges when you start talking about farm transition planning? You've got senior generation and you've got junior generation, and they don't necessarily always see eye to eye. The decision maker is that senior generation typically, and oftentimes in conversation that I have, one side of this two-headed monster, for whatever reason, has a hard time engaging in the conversation. So any thoughts that you want to share, and I'll pitch it to both of you.
Sure, I'll start. Yeah, that's a common issue, is 2 or 3 different generations and sometimes not the best communication or some different ideas and goals. We often invite the entire family to come in, and sometimes we're more counselor and psychologist than attorney. And sometimes we just got to sit there and pull things out of people and make sure everybody gets their chance to talk, and, you know, make sure everybody, you know, understands each other, understands what the differences are, what the similarities are. Then we can still start to build a plan, and also go back to, there's a plan for everybody. Part of the issue might be, you know, mom and dad want this, son and, you know, wife, daughter, whoever want this, and they think, well, those are incompatible, we can't do it. Well, might be surprised. There might be a plan where we can accomplish both goals. So that's what we try to do, is facilitate discussion and see what goals are available. And, you know, sometimes we have to push and pull and cajole, and I've never yelled, I don't think yet, but sometimes you just got to push the client a little bit to get there. But we're here to help, is what I would say.
Very good. And John, any comments that you'd like to share?
Well, some of the tools that we have, I think, really help to facilitate those conversations. So a lot of the tools that are part of the Land is Your Legacy program really prompt a lot of questions, saying, you know, what's important to you? You know, is it important that the farm pass on to the next generation and the generation after that? You know, what are your concerns? They have to prioritize their concerns and rank their concerns. And so I think the process helps to facilitate some of those conversations. And so to Robert's point, you know, sometimes you do have to pry. And the other thing that I'll just say is that it's not a, you know, one-time meeting and then, oh yeah, everything's done and solved. You know, we work, usually it's multiple meetings to really get down and discuss it. So we many times will have that discussion and start the process as we start to not even build the plan with Robert, but just uncover what their goals are, what they want to accomplish. Then we do our piece, then we meet with Robert, and I think it really helps to, Robert, I guess I would ask you is it helpful coming in with a Land is Your Legacy plan to have those discussions, or what are your thoughts?
I always like seeing the client walk in the door with their blue and white notebook. That way I know they've been working with you or whoever. But yeah, they've already had a lot of those discussions, know what some of the issues are, and are usually very much more prepared to move into the legal plan. And I don't have to spend nearly as much time on the counseling part because you've already done a lot of that.
Right. Okay. All right, so just to kind of introduce the whole program. So Land is Your Legacy is actually a program that Nationwide developed at the pleading by one of the board members who had a tragic loss in the family. And of course, it was farm related, and the farm had no plan. And so he saw firsthand the challenge that they had trying to move things forward without any planning done. So he went to the board and pleaded and said, you know, we really need to do something about this for farmers and landowners and ranch owners to help them facilitate the planning process. I'll just kind of jump ahead here a little bit. You know, still Nationwide's board is made up of a majority of farm owners. So you can kind of understand that's kind of their legacy. Our parent company was the Farm Bureau. Maybe people don't know that, but Nationwide has significant ties to the agricultural community. And because of that, they understand firsthand the need for transition planning. So that's how the Land is Your Legacy program came up. We'll talk about some common family scenarios, some things to consider. All right, that is who I am. So as I mentioned, Nationwide's history is rooted in agriculture. In 1926, Farm Bureau was founded, and because basically they felt like they were getting ripped off by insurance companies. And so to this day, Farm Bureau members still get a discount on their insurance. 55, actually one of our farm owners in Harrison County who also worked for Nationwide was very instrumental in getting Nationwide across the country. That would have been Mr. Millison out of Harrison County. All right, and then in 82, Nationwide acquired farmland insurance, which was part of, I believe, part of the Allied business too, and has been in the business for over 100 years. So Nationwide is now and has been the largest farm insurer in the country. Like I said, almost 10 years ago now, they launched this program, and right now, what I'll tell you is that there is no charge or fee for the Land is Your Legacy program. And as Robert mentioned, and I was suspect about this, but as he mentioned, the plan really does help to have a lot of discussions up front that really helps to prepare Robert. And it also saves you, and nothing to take anything away from Robert, but it also will save you, and I would say on average, up to about $5,000 in fees trying to come up with this program and plan. So we have a team of estate planning attorneys, CPAs, and financial planners that work together. If you remember his slide that had 3 circles and the overlapping piece, that's kind of where we come in. We are, and I say we as the Land is Your Legacy advisors, are your quarterback. We kind of come together to bring all the pieces, whether it's the CPA, the attorneys, all the different folks that will help you put together a plan that makes sense for you. And as Robert alluded to, this is not a one-size-fits-all. That's why it's kind of hard to say how much does it cost, because it varies dramatically by the family situation, and everyone is not the same. What you will find is, though, that your problems and concerns usually are not unique. So typically we've seen them before, we've come across them before. Your concerns we've had to address before as well. So I just think it's really critical to be able to work together and facilitate that together. Next slide. And Nationwide, I believe, is like in the top. I know they're in the top 100. I think they're like 65th right now on Forbes list. So Nationwide, like I said before, is the majority out of, I believe, 15 board members. 9 of them are active farmers, and it's been that way. I've been with the company almost 30 years, and it's been that way the entire time that I've been affiliated with Nationwide. So almost to the T, I think the statistic that we figured from our poll was 22%. But 99% of farms are family operated, family owned, and about 29% of those have transition plans in place. Now, the question that Robert raised too earlier is, I wonder how many of them have had those updated, and are they still relevant? So that's a good question. 62% are over the age of 55, which is still young, because that puts me in that age group that's still young. But it's important for us to address this as soon as possible, as early as possible, because that does play a role in how we can plan and the cost. So the sooner you do this, usually the less expensive it's going to be to take care of all the other pieces that we need to address. Next slide. All right, so we're not going to show you the video just because of technology challenges. It typically comes across choppy, but we're going to send that out to you so you can look at it. So who has a transition plan? Basically, in my opinion, anybody that owns a farm, owns a ranch, should have a transition plan. Several reasons. One is to preserve your legacy. Most people want the family farm, to transition to the next generation. They're just not sure how to do that. You want to safeguard the value of the operation. This is probably the most important one that comes across very clearly when we meet with farm families. I had one gentleman, as we're sitting across his dining room table with he and his wife, that he wants to be able to continue to gather the whole family around the dining room table at Thanksgiving and Christmas, because he's concerned that if they don't have an orderly transition, that won't happen anymore. So, and it's very true. A lot of families, when there's not a good plan in place and everybody's on the same page, it does create rifts in the family. Providing education on financial basics. So again, this is not typically something that you do, and it's funny that a lot of people get their information and their education at McDonald's over coffee with some of the other folks, So, well, hey, Tim said this morning at coffee that you need a trust or you need an LLC. And so where did Tim go to law school? Oh, no, he didn't go to law school. He just heard that from somebody else. So that's kind of the way it is a lot of times. How to turn on non-liquid assets into cash. That was one of the questions that he also raised is, what is your cash position? Are you land rich and cash poor? What does it look like? And what do we need to do to help set you up to be successful in retirement and in that transition? And identifying and managing risks. And we're not talking just about wind damage or hail damage or liability or something like that. Hopefully your farm agent has taken care of a lot of those things. But we're talking about health risks. We're talking about an unfortunate death or unplanned death or disability, and how we plan against that. How do we mitigate against that? So we're going to talk about things such as key man insurance or buy sell, or several different programs and processes that we can do to identify and manage those risks. Next slide. Okay, so these are the key phases, and these are the things that we address and identify and help to put a plan of recommendations. So we don't tell you what to do. We tell you things that you should consider when you look at each of these pieces. And then we take that plan and work together with someone like Robert or Ryan or some of the other attorneys that really know and understand farm planning. So succession planning, that's a biggest part, I think, but business planning, transitioning the farm business, risk management, and that could be everything from your liability coverages on the farm to, like I said, life insurance to protect against the loss of a significant partner on the farm, key man benefits there. Robert alluded to ways to take care of whether it could be a second marriage, and so we want to have life insurance on the main owner to take care of that spouse in the event of an untimely passing, so that the farm can then transition to the kids that they really intended to. Financial independence, so what are you going to live on in retirement? Do you have enough in the form of investments, Social Security, Many farm owners don't have a pension. So what do we need to do and look at to provide that financial independence? And then, of course, estate planning and estate tax planning. As he alluded to, there's over 11, almost $12 million in credits, but there is a sunset coming, I believe, and Robert, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in about 5 years, that sunset is coming, and those credits will start to go down. And if we have a change in office, that could come down sooner. So there is a really important area of planning there to help you make sure that everything moves smoothly. Next slide. All right, so step one is where I get involved. We have pieces that we can send out and that we can provide for you to help you ask those questions. And they're really, as Robert alluded to, and some of the challenges with different generations, how do we start the conversation? How do we address the concerns? And usually when we address the concerns, we're addressing it for both generations or multiple generations. So it really asks those questions that, are, important things to uncover and understand and make sure everybody's on the same page. So that this is where I'm involved, and as well as the key farming operation people. Next step. So the next step is we gather all of this information. We understand the questions, we understand the concerns, we understand what's important, and we prioritize them. And then we send all of this information to our team, and then they start to identify, well, if you do this, this is going to be the result. And if you do this, this is going to be the result. And here's some key concerns that we should look at and identify because of what you want to do and accomplish. So then we get back together after the plan is developed and say, okay, here are some of the concerns they have. Here are some of the recommendations that they make. And then we would want to sit down with the attorney. And that's when Robert likes to see the blue and white book that we create, because it really helps to identify the key components that we need to address, identify the key concerns. Now, we're not going to come up with the answers. We're going to come up with the key concerns, and we're going to say, you might want to consider this, this, or this. And then that's where Robert or Brian or whoever on the team that we're working with says, okay, well, I would probably recommend going with this because of this and this and this. And so we really help to map out, pull the tools like he was talking about in as they're needed to put together and create your plan. Like I said, this is not one size fits all. I've done, I can't tell you how many now plans, and they're not the same. None of them are the same. So who's involved? That's myself. And then we would typically work with an estate planning attorney that's well-versed in farm planning, as well as possibly a CPA or another accounting professional that you work with. Annual review, and this is where Robert said this is not a document. What the tendency is that you take the document after it's back, and we got the trust established, we have all this plan together, and then it goes on a shelf like the one behind me, right? And then it just sits there and it creates dust, right? This should not be that way. We should want to talk to whoever your farm agent is on a regular basis, just like you review your farm plans. We're going to review this plan as well to make sure that it's still meeting your needs, to make sure that nothing has changed. And it happens. It does. I mean, changes occur all the time. So it's really important for us to continue to work with you, to continue to update that and see what changes have taken place. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. So I'm typically that quarterback. And so I work with your property and casualty agent or your farm agent. I would work with your bank, real estate agent, attorneys. We recently worked with a surveyor because the client was looking at breaking up their property. They have 900 acres, and we needed to figure out how we were going to transition to the two key people that we wanted to, and what makes the most sense with breaking down the land. Because as you probably know, you got different units and parcels, and they don't all meet exactly or perfectly. So you got to identify those things and work together. So, again, we're going to come up with ideas and concepts for them to look at. And then we would work with your attorney and your CPA to put all those pieces together. Some common scenarios. So, active farming children. And this is kind of important for us to have the conversations and sit at the table, because in many farm operations, maybe one of the kids is really good at keeping the books, and they're really good at that. And they're really sharp with looking at prices and looking at maybe investments or things like that. Others, they're more hands-on. They want to be out there planning and harvesting and working with the cattle or doing whatever it is. They're going to be more involved in that operation. Others, as Robert had in the example, they're not active in the farm. They might not even live in the general area anymore. So how do we compensate them? How do we set them up? And the conversation of fair versus equal comes up all the time. If you have 3 kids and one's active and the other 2 are not, and you just divide up the farm 3 ways, that really puts the child that's actively farming in a real bind. So how can we be fair with the other 2 kids, but not create a very challenging situation to keep the farm operational? So there's ways that we can do that, and we'll talk through those, and we'll have those conversations. Is there a brother or sister that you farm with today? What are their plans? A lot of times it could be a cousin, it could be an aunt or an uncle, it could be a lot of different situations. What is their long-term plan? What do they want to do? Are there other family members that are coming of age that want to be involved and currently are not? So we'll address all of those concerns as well. And then non-family members, is there a key person or property that the operation needs to retain? How do we do that? And again, Robert will address that. And then are there ex-family members that could affect the operation? So, we don't like to talk about it, but, God forbid one of the kids that would go through a divorce. And then how do we protect the farm against being divided up against, ex-spouses? So what do we need to do to address that? And again, it's not the first time we've had to address it, and it won't be the last. And so there are ways and tools to set up, plans to protect that. So these are some of the major things to consider. It's obviously it's not the whole list, but it's a major one. Their resistance to retire or desire to maintain control. So I think we can still, and again, this is why it's so important to work with somebody who has done this and grown up, farming in a farm family, is we can actually accomplish this without a lot of problems. A lot of times the current generation, they don't want to stop farming. Well, they don't have to. And they can also have a say. They can also have control up until their passing. But we can still have a plan and still have things set so that it transitions smoothly. Failure to identify succession leadership and mentor the next generation leader is huge. So how do we teach them? How do we inform them? Are they prepared to take that on and to take over control? So how do we help with that transition? Sibling frictions. So how do we create something that is fair? So they're talking about estate equalization. We want to be fair, but we also don't want to fracture the ownership of the farm. So again, there's ways for us to solve that dilemma. Lack of money to pay for succession planning and support. So again, these are things that we can address with this, and don't feel like there's things that have never come up before, because they have. And then this is one of the risks that they're talking about that we need to really plan for. Final expenses, estate clearance costs, healthcare. I'll give you a quick example of our own family. Grandparents on one side of the family didn't have a plan, didn't have what we call long-term care protection. And Grandpa was a very successful physician, and they had a really nice home. They had the office building right next door. They had a house at the shore, and they were in a very good place. Fortunately, Grandpa had a stroke. The caretakers didn't realize that he was diabetic, sent him into diabetic shock, and he was completely permanently paralyzed for the rest of his life, bedridden, had to be cared for 24/7. So over that period of time that they cared for him, Grandmom sold the office, had to sell the beach house, and ultimately had to sell her house to pay for all the costs and try to survive on her own. She ended up moving in with my mother-in-law because she couldn't afford it. Other side of the family, the grandparents had a really nice long-term care program. They moved into an assisted living facility, transitional care, and Grandmom passed away at the ripe age of 93, and Grandpa lived 10 more years, and everything was taken care of, and everything moved smoothly. So there are ways to protect yourselves against these things that we can really help you with. Next slide. So the next step would be is to complete your evaluation, and I believe that we're going to send these out to you. And then they'll have my contact information there. So what I would love to do is set up a time to meet with you. I typically like to do these at your farm, so I can kind of get a feel for your operation and see what you do and who the key players are. So leave that up to you. Okay, we went backwards. Go forward again. Yep. So start thinking and get organized. That when you'll get a checklist as well. And that transition checklist will really help you to prioritize what you want to do and accomplish, what's really important. And then there'll be a document checklist as well, the things that we'll need to do to get together and to submit so we can create your plan. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask, and I look forward to meeting you later.
Hey, thanks so much, John. We have had a few questions that have come in through the chat feature. But one of the questions that did come through, and help me understand. So you talked a little bit about Nationwide's attorneys and the advanced consulting group, the people that you work with within Nationwide. So you're a financial advisor,
Right?
and you work with the advanced consulting group and the people within the Land is Your Legacy program. And so these attorneys, CPAs, and folks, they're not practicing attorneys, but they do and have a wealth of experience in the kind of business planning side. Can you help frame that up for me a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. And I'll also ask Robert to chime in as well, because one of the things that is great about working with Robert is he actually helped to create the Land is Your Legacy program with Nationwide. So I'll have Robert chime in as well. But yeah, so I believe that many of the team members came from practicing in other capacities prior to coming over to Nationwide. So again, they are very well versed in this. And then again, like I said, what they do is they come up with recommendations that we would then take to Robert, or Ryan, or whoever it is that we're working with to say, okay, what really makes sense here to you, and how would that impact the family?
Great. Yeah, and so there is still the need for any of the program participants. They're still going to work with their attorney of their choosing, and they
Correct. Yep.
Fantastic. So one of the questions that came in earlier, and it was specific to one of your slides, Robert. I think it was that second one, where it was really a question around costs associated with that kind of second marriage. And to realize that all of this stuff and so many of the questions that folks kind of top of mind are going to be centered around, okay, this all sounds well and good, but it's going to cost me money, and I've got taxes to pay, I've got farm labor to pay, I've got machinery to buy, and I've got a lot of obligations. So the question that came in was really around that second marriage, ballpark idea of what the cost was.
Yeah, so I had mentioned before somewhere around $5,000 for a trust. We're gonna be able to address pretty much all those issues on that table. So whether you've got problem heirs, a second marriage, a complex issue, that's still going to be in the ballpark of that cost.
Okay, excellent. And so there was another question that kind of came in, and this does go a little bit into the cost for the Land is Your Legacy program, right? So John, as a Land is Your Legacy advisor, you have access to the resources at Nationwide, and they can help kind of walk through some of the different scenarios that are going to be coming in. But you specifically, there is no cost to the Land is Your Legacy program.
Correct.
So you want to kind of dig into that a little bit more. There was a question that came in a few minutes ago that, hey, I've already got something kind of set up. I've got some trusts. How could I go about kind of getting a second opinion or kind of a quick look-see to see if kind of what we have is going to be sufficient?
Yeah, so we could definitely do that. I mean, a lot of the folks, and Robert, by all means chime in, but some of the folks that we've done plans for, they were very much outdated, and we ended up redoing. I'm thinking of one, Robert, right now that we worked on together that they thought they had everything taken care of, and when we revisited it, they didn't. And so we were able to fix it, and we worked together with the senior generation and the second generation, and they were just so happy and pleased, and I think sleep much better now that we did that. So yeah, I don't know if you can address that too,
Yeah, I would agree. If you've had an estate plan for a while, or if you just want somebody else to take a look at it that maybe works a little bit more on the farming side of things, Land is Your Legacy, or somebody like myself, doesn't hurt to take a look at it, and if everything's in good shape, we'll tell you so. If not, we'll give you some ideas.
Yeah. And I actually have a copy of the blue book that Robert mentioned earlier with the Land is Your Legacy plan. And really what this plan does through the work of somebody like John or a Land is Your Legacy advisor in your neck of the woods, or somebody you feel comfortable with. The key that I found in all these conversations with so many of our members and so many of our farmers, and through conversations with folks at Nationwide and advisors like yourself, John, the key it really is to find somebody that you can work well with, that understands your industry, understands your business, and that you kind of feel comfortable with, and that somebody that you feel like you can trust.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah, and having those conversations really is going to be some time. And as you kind of work through the Land is Your Legacy plan, which again, there is no cost to the Land is Your Legacy plan. Why are you engaged in the Land is Your Legacy program?
Well, like I said, I've actually been a Farm Bureau member now for almost 30 years myself, and really buy into what Nationwide has really been trying to do with this. And so I've been involved now. I don't know if it's been like 5 or 6 years now that I've been involved with the program. What I'll tell you is you can't be in this just for the money. You can't. It's a long-term proposition. There are some people that we just completed plans within for that we spoke with at a Farm Bureau function 3 years ago. And it's a matter of building a trust relationship and understanding that we're really here to help you solve your problems and concerns. And so after people hear me speak 2 or 3 times, many times, they'll come back and say, we really do need to get together. And the other thing that triggers it a lot of times too is there might have been a farm member, 2 doors down that recently passed away, and their farm had to be auctioned off, and they're like, oh my gosh, we need to do something. And so the thing is with Nationwide about the program is they truly believe in farm families. That's their heritage. That's who they are. The board, like I said, is still made up of a majority of farm owners. And so they have a vested buy-in to this whole thing. So that's why we really do what we do, because they're spending quite a bit of money on this, but it's a big part of who they are. So
yeah, well, and at Farm Bureau, we're certainly appreciative of the support Nationwide provides to farming families, and huge advocates of the program. One of the reasons why we're so engaged in this and why we're trying to do what we can to help support the program, because we know that some of the challenges as farmers kind of get into that transition planning phase, we know that it's a resource that helps. And we want to do what we can to help prepare our members with finding the resources like Mr. Moore, like you, John, and some of the other resources out there to help them put their plan together. So these programs and this topic in particular is one that is pretty universal across every farming operation in the state of Ohio. It is not something that, as they've said already, it is not something that's complete and then you forget about it. It's something that you need to revisit. It's good to have partners that you trust that can help you put the plan together in place for your operation. As they've said, there's a plan out there for you. It's just finding the right expertise, finding the people that know the industry and that know farming, that are willing to go out and have those conversations and help you put your best plan together. So, Robert, any last words that you want to share?
Nope. Just if you haven't done anything or think you might need an update, find somebody that can help, and Land is Your Legacy is a good place to start.
Excellent. John, any final thoughts?
yeah, the only thing I would just say is understanding, and I guess one of the folks pinged me and said I should share this, but part of what we do is we help with all of those aspects and concerns that you have. So we help with retirement planning. That's a big part of what we do. We help with the long-term care or the health care and retirement. We help with disability benefits to cover farm owners and farm workers. We help with the estate planning aspects, that working together with Robert. So I don't want to mislead you and say that we do this all for free. But as you have solutions to your problems that come up That's where we come in and we take care of those together with you and with Robert, so that, like I said, our folks sleep well at night knowing that there will be a smooth transition. God forbid, when something happens, and we can protect you so that, things go well.
To all of you at home, you're here now. You've come this far. I would really encourage you, whether it's with Robert or with John or with a Land is Your Legacy advisor, what matters now is, are you going to be willing to put the time and energy and focus into putting your plan in place? Obviously, you're here, so you're interested. I would just encourage you to tackle that challenge and swallow that whale one bite at a time. So thank you much.